So we were able to get that scenario taken care of with that particular individual that I spoke about that had what was an eviction case that was really cloaking a murder case according to outlaw. I'm calling it outlaw uh, codes. What do I mean by that? There's an outlaw aspect to law. There's an aspect to law that when court is over, this is when the so-called outlaw begins to either capitalize or lose money. And this particular case was affecting the outlaw's money. I'm just being real with you. And they were using an old lady to essentially extort an outlaw, a couple of outlaws, believe it or not. And that scenario was taken care of because it was going to actually be reflected financially as a murder case. And I want to clear that up because they said, well, what do you mean it's a eviction notice and it's really a murder case? I'm talking about the amount of money that was up for grabs was equivalent to a murder case. It was way exceeded an eviction case. And the eviction case was just used to essentially cover up a murder case. And that was taken care of or whatever based upon what's called when someone is politically murdered. This is what we get into when someone's politically murdered. And when someone's politically murdered, this essentially is dealing with their social security and the amount of money that may have been backing their social security has been totally depleted. And this person is now considered dead. And there are people that can murder you literally this way. And this is what happened to this particular individual. And this particular individual, thanks to myself and some work that was done, this is not considered a murder anymore. It's not considered a murder case anymore. And essentially now it's moving into, it's actually calling it a murder case now is an understatement, because once the case takes place and once the scenario happens, which is tomorrow, actually, this case is going to play out publicly tomorrow. Once this takes place tomorrow, this is going to be considered, and this is going to get into drugs, dope, moving out of murder, and move into drugs and dope because of the amount of money that is being used in the corporate world is coming from a source out of the country that's essentially would be considered dope here in America. Why? Because of elements of this particular source is banned in this particular case. Why am I saying this? Because the resources that was generated from this particular case before it started and got on paper. See, this case played out 2 years ago. It started 2 years ago, as far as building up so-called evidence for this case to even be put onto the docket in court was started over 2 years ago, and essentially goes back to even 20 to 40 years ago when you start researching it. But just from 2 years ago, it would have been considered a murder. And we did a lot of work to clean that up from finding out that the amount of money that was generated exceeded even murder. That was too cheap. So now it's moving into a drug case that won't be taxed. The only way that they would ever be able to make this criminal drug case, it's not going to be a criminal drug case either, by the way. The only way that this will be taxed, this will be going into what's called the X folder aspect of taxes. When you see the word taxes, you see an X. And also when you deal with medicine and pharmacy, you see an X in the pharmaceutical industry. And also when you deal with astrology, you get into what's called a fucus, or the unknown, or the X factor of astrology. So this is going to all tie into and eventually lead us back to astrology as I talk about this in future episodes. But I want to point out here is that the amount of money, this is what I deal with when I deal with outlaw cases, is all dealing with money, visa units, sports units, different currencies, things of that nature, and this being measured up with UCCs and with different even statutes that are used in law. So essentially, any type of charge has a dollar amount associated with it. Period. That's why it's called a charge. And we talked about this before or whatever, but this is just going into a real life scenario. So in this particular case, this particular charge has exceeded the amount of money that would be for an eviction notice, of course, and then even going into a murder. He's like, well, why are you taking it to such an extreme and talking about drugs and murder, and it's just eviction, associating all of this with this particular individual? Because I'm a person that takes you to the source of anything, where money comes from, and essentially anything that's dealing with Social Security. This person was on Social Security too, as well. Anything that's dealing with Social Security, I say was because this person is now employed, which is great, and it's not even dependent on Social Security since this particular scenario happened. Mind you, we've helped this person through outlaw means and ways and methods to get a job and everything, and sacrificing even ourselves and our appearance, as you can see, which I'll talk about, sacrificing that just to help this particular individual. And we were successful in doing that because it was that much money associated with this case. And you got to ask yourself, if you had the chance to essentially, you had a hedge fund, which is what I have, and you had the chance to get an investor that probably had billions of dollars tied into their name to come into your fold, what would you sacrifice for that? What would you sacrifice for that? That's what you got to ask yourself, to be able to touch, possibly in the future, within a short period of time, within 5 years, billions of dollars, or at least at least $1 billion, to be able to count. So not touch, excuse me, but to be able to count $1 billion and bring this particular group actually into your investment fold, which this lady was the leader of this group, believe it or not. So this isn't just, when I'm talking about this individual, this person is a powerful person that has their own influence as well. So I'm not knocking this person, but this person was extorted though, and their influence didn't make them a lot of money, and that's what I was schooling them on. And now this person sees the value in, okay, I need to increase my net worth and what I'm making or whatever, because come to find out, I was funded by drugs. Was murder capital? Well, like I said, we cleaned that up. The political murders that took place with these people that were murdered politically, we were able to help a lot of these people become wealthy. They're not murder capital. Murder capital is essentially, in political terms, is when you're too poor to do anything for yourself and you're being extorted at the same time from resources that you may be connected to through your family will, or through an inheritance, or through a past life, or meaning when you were married or something like that, when you were wealthy, and then now you may be in a scenario where you're a bum or whatever the case may be because of circumstances that you have no control over. You may be a veteran, even. That's considered murder capital. You came back from a war and they're not taking care of you, the government's not taking care of you. That's considered murder capital to me, in an outlaw perspective. And this is why I help my clients and what I do, essentially on the side or whatever, to help people to get out of these scenarios or whatever. So this person, come to find out, is tied into, I'm calling it drugs. I want to call it this on purpose. I could clean it up and say it's products and business and white collar crime and lie to you, but I'm not, because that's not enough money. It's a lot of money on the table. A lot of people that work jobs don't imagine this type of money that I'm talking about. Serious. And this particular person's name has all of this on it. This type of stuff on it, associated with it, and the statutes of limitation can't go back and prosecute this person for drugs per se, because this person is not affiliated with it in current times. Let me make that clear. This person's not a drug dealer in current times. It never was, for the record. According to this particular person's facts, they claim to have never sold a drug in their life. I say claim because I haven't seen them do it, and they claim that they haven't. So I mean, if they have, I'm not aware of that and I wasn't taught that and told that. But like I said, this client, and I'm not even saying this client's name because it's confidential, and I don't want you to know who has money, because you may go out and try to rob them and get yourself killed, by the way, because they have serious security around them. For me to be able to get this client, I had to work with different police force, security agencies, FBI. I've worked with them all to be able to access this particular client, and their resources was protected that much. And I was finally able to infiltrate all of that and gain a sense of, to come up with a, I guess, a case is what I'm calling it, to be able to shop this particular person's problem to people that have more money that can sponsor us to help us to be able to eventually take this particular person's assets, which is going to add up to billions, I believe, and trade off of it and make even more money. That's what I'm here to do. So again, so let me get back and I'll shut down this person's UCCs, and what they were being charged with was too cheap to me. And that was like a dummy case to me, like a kangaroo case that they were just throwing out there, eviction case. They extorted this person and made them broke so they could evict them. Make that clear. They made them broke. The system did it. I watched it and have evidence and proof because I shadowed this person to watch it. They extorted them on purpose now so they would be broke, so they couldn't pay their rent because it was tied into murder money that they wanted to get out, murder capital. This is how the system really works, that they wanted to use for their own interests. So I was able to stop them. They're angry. They want to kill me for this right now. I'm public enemy #1 in this area because of this. And I was able to block that, though, through my work with this particular individual. Our work, excuse me, it's a group of us too as well. I speak for a group. Through our work, was able to block this from happening. But now this particular person is still going to be extorted because they still have to go to court, which I said is tomorrow. They're not going, actually, thanks to some work that I put up. They don't have to appear, actually. But it's still going to take place. It's still going to take place. The case is going to take place with this person's in this person's absence, of which this person is conscious of. This is how it's going to play out. And when it's over, they're still going to make money. And I didn't like that. So I decided to change it on this episode publicly. I'm announcing it to what would be considered a murder. A drug case, outlaw drug case, of which you can't trace the drugs. There's no fingerprints. There's no nothing, no dealing. You're not going to see dealers on the corner. This is deeper than that. This is not dealing with any type of a street drug. This is actually dealing with, to be specific, I would call it a data drug and an eye visa drug that cannot be seen, an invisible drug that people are hooked to and using to make money from. And that's why it's called a drug, essentially. And this particular person and a group of people or whatever have been tied into a network, and their resources have been used to essentially as a commodity to get more of this drug by outside silent investors. So they're being used as kind of like crash dummies and invested in by silent investors who getting drugs and stuff off of these particular people. This is why it's a drug case, and it's very lucrative. I watch it daily on the stock market, through sports and other means and public funds that I watch. And I know for sure, and private funds as well, that it's very lucrative, whatever. So this is why I'm calling it a drug case. And it's really, the eviction case is just really a coupon or a ticket, I'll call it, to be able to get money or to be able to become a dealer really in these drugs. Is what I essentially am on the outside accusing these particular people of, that are affiliated. When I say people, these actors in court, that they're going to have a peer that I talked to you about. They're going to show up as prosecutors and lawyers and property managers, and not the judge though per se, but more so the actors that take place. The judge fully knows what I'm talking about and participates in the game. But they're going to have these people show up or whatever and potentially try to charge this person with an eviction notice of being broke, essentially, so they can get money out of this person and put this person in what's called public funds or put this person on public display, their name in all caps, to be able to generate capital from this particular person. So that's what I'm essentially accusing, not charging, accusing, and then will essentially begin to make notes after that in another language, in another currency, outside of the U.S. jurisdiction. Just letting you know what I'm doing to be able to build up enough funds and resources and invest that back into the U.S. through methods and vehicles that I have established to be able to essentially take this out of a drug arena for this particular individual and eventually move this into a limited liability company that is backed by a group of names and commodities, more so, that have equal value to these so-called drugs and different products that are being used to trade off of this person's name and credit and things of that nature. Now, you might not understand all of this, but just begin to, as you watch videos like this, to start researching sovereignty. So I'm gonna go ahead and put a pin in the deeper information at this point and begin to just research this stuff. And eventually you'll get into learning about kinghood and queenhood. And this will help you to understand more so what I'm speaking of. And I use this term kinghood and queenhood very loosely because I don't want to put the term hood behind it, but for a loss of words. And a lot of words in this video aren't necessarily legally or 100% written out, but most of what I said, I can stand on it through paperwork is what I'm saying. And I have legal paperwork to back up everything that was stated in this video to prove that this person was unaware of what was going on in their name, and it still is unaware and very unsound and what would be considered more of a ward at this particular point that is conscious in another name and another straw man. This person is very conscious, but up under her straw man, she's considered a ward because the system will not adopt her sovereignty into the system. She has an ID. See, that's the difference. Like, some sovereigns don't have IDs. This particular person has an ID, of which a lot of queens do carry IDs and things of that nature. So that's a part of their system of how they get money and credit, and that's not to knock them. This is why the sovereignty game is kind of messed up, because they're supposed to be a bishop or some form of security force that, and even knights that protect this particular queen so that they don't have to eventually ID in, because of the way the system's set up through relationships right now and sex, and the way that we'll cover that if we talk about hours of this stuff. It's set up like that right now, to where this person has to now ID and identify with the matrix to get money and credit, because if you don't, you'll be a pauper. Trust me, I've lived like that for 9 years, I know. And if you don't have any type of paperwork and stuff like that, this is why people have to live like that. But I started learning about paperwork, and I'm slowly getting out of that. But for people that care, this is why I carry my appearance like this. If you had access to possibly billions of dollars that you're helping other people with, and that you could be kidnapped or something like that to try to get money from other people that they know you got access to, like, I want to get access to this billionaire, so let me get him, type of thing. You would carry yourself like that too. And I know how to protect myself. I know martial arts, but every day I'm like potentially almost robbed. Yeah, this person looking like this, still walking around looking like this. Still, let me. I look bummy to you. And eventually my appearance is going to change because I'm getting into some things next year. But as time goes on, of course I look bummy to you, and I understand that. And a part of it is to protect myself. I always remember that, because have access to a lot of money. It doesn't matter. Don't worry about the views and all of that type of stuff and the judgments of how high this and that is. I don't want to really be put out there like that, because everybody that watches these videos, most of them are millionaires. Every click. I'm telling you, majority of them are millionaires that watch these videos. There's very few poor people that watch these videos anyway, so they understand it anyway. You know what I'm saying? They know what it's like to come from poor to go to being rich. So again, this person, it was cheap. I'm gonna go ahead and shut down what they were using, even putting in talking about murder is too cheap. Actually, from studying my research, there's drugs is more lucrative than murder. I'm just being real with you. Any type of drug is going to be more lucrative than murder, whether it's legal, pharmaceutical, or illegal on the streets, or herbs. Even you're going to make more than a murderer, or a person that even was caught up into politically murdering people, of which a lot of people do in this industry. They politically murder people, whether it's through organizations, things of that nature, and joining these organizations and using people's strawman names to rob them, which is turns into murder after it exceeds a certain amount. So I want to be clear in that. That's what I was speaking of when I speak of murder. I'm not speaking of someone physically coming in and shooting someone, pow, and then running out and then getting paid for it. That's even very cheap. It wouldn't make a lot of money compared to, believe it or not, political murder is more lucrative. To get a group of people's names on paper and then murder them, take their resources from them without them even knowing magically, and even be able to put it back if you needed to. This is how they move. But they murdered her, and that was cleaned up through an outside party with myself and other people. But it happened, and I'm not going to go into that story because it could take me 4 hours of why it happened, how it happened. It's actually something that this person doesn't even understand. It's a part of their name and the vibration of their name and what their name ties into even before they were born. And each name is an estate. Remember that. Care what your name is, it's an estate. Care what it is, and you need to figure out what it's an estate, what it ties in with, and whether it's an under estate for a bigger estate, and why, and how you can extract those resources and be able to use those resources and turn those resources into commodities and trade off of those resources and eventually free yourself from your job and create a job for yourself. Even you don't have to have a business. You can create a job for yourself, become an independent contractor, and do this as well. There's many ways. If you're interested, you can always get a consultation from me. Right now, I'm promoting my email if you want to contact me, which is 13 the number signs plural astrology@gmail.com, for people that care about me and want to donate to keep this going, because I have no resources coming in from no government. I'm not an agent or anything like that. I'm a real live person in here that actually makes videos by hand and does a lot of work, very talented on my own, whether it's legally, I'm a healer and an astrologer, as well as an artist, which is number one to me. These videos are part of an art and a science to be able to heal a group of people that need it, that are really rich and don't know it, and need to take their money and link their money together to have something. Namaste.